Raylan Davis. Raylan Davis. And Teen Miss Blueberry, we have Kaylee Vales. Would you give them a big hand, because they worked really hard to get this position, and they got a whole year of reigning in royalty over Poplarville. Thank you. Give them a big hand. Al Saucers was one of our storytellers that had some really unique stories. And so I want to tell one of his stories as I remembered it. Now, I'm going to tell it as if I'm Al himself. I grew up down in Louisiana, and my uncles came along and they said, we're going hunting. You want to go with us? It's the season now. Yes, well, I want to go hunting, you know. A boy like me, I like to go hunting and fishing anytime. And my uncle and his friends, they asked me to go along. Sure, I'll go along. And so we went hunting. Well, this was a season that I was not familiar with, so they took us way down into the lower swamps of Louisiana, and there was a clearing there. A very small clearing amongst all the trees, and beside it was this old rickety cabin. And for the hunting, they told me, you go sit on this stump right out in the middle of the clearing. I think the clearing was probably about the size of this space right here. And they put me right out in the middle of it, and the stump was about as high as one of those seats there, and told me to sit on it. Now, they took a rope and tied to my leg, and it went off into the woods with the end of the rope, and they all hid. Now that sounds kind of strange for a hunting trip, don't you think? Well, I sat there for a while, and it wasn't very long before I heard this sound. It sounded like these big propeller bombers in World War II, when the big squadrons are coming over, you know, and lots and lots and lots of noise, and I could hear it, and I couldn't see anything, but it kept getting louder and louder and closer and closer. And before long, I could see way up there. It looked more like fighter planes than bombers, but it made a noise just like airplanes and everything like that. And they were starting to circle up there, and they were circling and circling. And before long, it looked like it was kind of like a tornado. You know how a tornado starts out high and it kind of funnels down? Well, that's what it was. And it was, but instead of these fighter airplanes, it was these big giant mosquitoes. Now, I guess what it was, they were circling to figure out if it was safe to come down or not, because they first sent the scouts down. And the scouts came down and they kind of buzzed my head a little bit, and it kind of like when they come close, it's kind of like a helicopter, and they buzzed me in the back, and I was starting to get a little bit worried. You know, those mosquitoes were pretty big, and I figured if there was enough of them, they could pick me up and carry me off. And with those stingers in them, it wouldn't take long to just suck all the blood clear out of me. Well, I was getting worried. I was getting goosebumps all over. And but then I got to thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on here. And there was besides the sound and the sight, there was a smell. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly what it smelled like, but I figured out later on what it was. You know, insects puts out a pheromone. And a pheromone is something that's going to use to attract other insects. And so I figured that these scouts had come down and they had let out all their pheromones, and all the rest of those way up there circling in the clouds up there was going to come down after they've been given the signal. So here they came, just like a whole squadron of fighters, and they come right in toward like they were going to get me. Well, that was when my uncles in the woods started opening up with their shotguns. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, the one mosquito never got to me. It would have been bad if they would, but see, as it turned out, I was the bait to bring the mosquitoes in. And boom, 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 boom. And those mosquitoes, they finally figured out it wasn't safe, and so the rest of them all took off. Well, after all the shooting was done, there was mosquitoes all over the place. Big, giant mosquitoes now. So what were we going to do? Well, then they took all those mosquitoes and they took them in and they dressed them out. Now you think there's not much in a mosquito, right? Well, there's not much meat in a mosquito, but the drumsticks, there's a lot of drumsticks. You know the insect has 6 drumsticks? We filled up 2, no, I believe it's more now. I believe there's 3 big coolers full of mosquito drumsticks. Now, you don't see these anymore because I think all those Cajuns down there, they figured out how this season worked and how to get them, because we know now that those mosquitoes are extinct, and that's the truth. Jenny?
I think I come in on the storytelling game a little bit late, but I grew up with a daddy that loved to tell stories, and my granny told stories on my daddy. And when Daddy would be really kind of grumpy and gruff, sometimes she would tell a story to make us a little bit more sensitive to the fact that Daddy grew up as a child too. You know, he started off as a child just like we were. And she told us the story one time about my daddy and how he had went one time to a strange church. They used to go to camp meetings, and camp meetings would last all week. And people would go and they would camp, and they would hear preaching every night. And sometimes they'd have day services. And Daddy really liked camp meeting. He really liked to hear the Word of God, and he liked to hear the preaching. But my granny was not always feeling well. And in the middle of the week, something came up and she had to go back home, and so Daddy wasn't going to get to go to camp meeting. He had an older brother, Ned, and he had 2 younger brothers, Jook and Seabird. So they didn't seem to mind not going to camp meeting. They always just played around at camp meeting, didn't listen to the preaching and didn't listen to the singing, but my daddy did. My daddy really enjoyed it. And Granny promised him before the week was over she'd get him back to camp meeting so he could visit with everybody and hear some more preaching. But every morning she got up after that and she was so sick. And she never got him back to camp meeting. And finally it comes Sunday into camp meeting, and Daddy was so upset. He said, "You promised, Mama, you promised." And she said, "I did, but I ain't gonna make it. I ain't gonna make it." Well, Daddy was upset, and he was crying, and my Uncle Ned said, "Oh, you just a tit. You just a tit. You crybaby." And so Daddy got upset, and he went off in the woods and decided he'd cry alone. And so there was this little pool by a stream, and Daddy sat down by the pool and was crying. He probably cried himself to sleep. And the next thing you know, he woke up and there was the best service going on right there beside the pool. There was this great big bullfrog over on the other side of the pool sitting on a rock. And there was frogs all around the pool. Every kind of frog you could think of. Big frogs, little frogs. But that big frog, he kept going, "Ronk, ronk, 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 ronk." And Daddy decided he was the preacher. And all those other little frogs, different ones, had different voices. And they had ronk, ronk, ronk. You know, he said that was the amen section. He said, but there was big frogs, little frogs, green frogs, all the toad frogs, just every kind of frog you could see. And they were all over the place, all around the water. And this went on for a long, long time. You know, some preachers are real long-winded. And then finally, they had a song service. And there was some of the beautifulest voices. Daddy said he never heard such beauty in voices. And they sang couldn't remember what hymn it was, but he knew it was one of them old familiar tunes. Maybe it was Bringing in the Sheaves or Camping in Canaan's Land, or he wasn't sure which song it was, but he was sure it was the best. And they all sang in harmony. And after all the singing, they had an invitation. The old preacher says, "Rah, rah, rah, rah," and all the frogs just agreed. They jumped in and were all baptized and swam off together. And Daddy came home to Granny and all smiles and happy, and she said, "Son, what did you do? Why are you all happy now? You were upset because you couldn't go to camp meeting." He said, "But Mama, I went to the best service you ever seen." He said, "I went to Frog Church." He said, "There was the big toad frog, and he was the preacher." He said, "And they was all together in unity, and they all agreed on everything." He said, "And I know it was the best sermon I ever heard because they all jumped in, were baptized, and swam off together." So Daddy said that was the best sermon he ever heard. That's the time he went to Frog Church.
You know, sometimes as we get a little bit older, we aren't so embarrassed about some things that happened when we were younger. So I'm going to just tell a little story on myself. It's called Country Kid Goes to Town. It was a senior class trip to Denver from Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And we got on the bus at night, and we pulled into Denver in the morning, and all the people on the bus got off to go to the restaurant to have breakfast. So four of us boys were sitting in a booth and ordering breakfast, and we had the menus and everything, and the waitress came over to get our orders. And I was looking at the menu and the different things, and I said, you know, this is a senior trip, I got to try something new. So looking at that menu, I saw omelet. Well, I'd never had an omelet before. In fact, I really didn't know what an omelet was. So I said, I'll have an omelet. And the waitress said, well, what would you like to have on it? Well, I didn't know. I said, well, I guess I'll just have eggs on mine. And so she got real mad and everybody laughed, and I didn't even know why. And then we went to this cafeteria, really modern cafeteria, where you won't go down this line and there's these windows. And each and everything that you ordered at the cafeteria was in that glass thing. And we'd go down there and look at something and, oh, I think that looks pretty good. So we'd punch the button and nothing came out. Well, it must be out or something. So we go down there and try some more. And we finally got down to the end there, and this cashier says, "You want all this stuff?" We finally figured out that's not what you're supposed to put in your order in when you punch that button. Marietta said, I want to sing a song. I was hanging around town, just spending my time, out of a job and not earning a dime, when a feller stepped up and he said, I suppose you're a bronc rider from the looks of your clothes. You figured me right, I'm a good one, I claim. Do you happen to have any bad ones to tame? He said he's got one, a bad one to buck. At throwing good riders, he's had lots of luck. I get off, head up, and I ask what he pays to ride this old nag for a couple of days. He offers me 10, I said, I'm your man. A bronc never lived that I couldn't fan. He said, get your saddle, I'll give you a chance. In his buckboard we hopped and we drove to the ranch. We stayed until morning, and right after chuck, I steps out to see if this outlaw can buck. Down in the horse corral, standing alone, was an old caballo, a strawberry roan. His legs are all spathered, he's got pigeon toes, little pig eyes and a big Roman nose, little pin ears that touch at the tip. A big 44 brand was on his left hip, ewe-neck and old with a long lower jaw. I could see with one eye, he's a regular outlaw. I gets the blinds on him, it sure is a fright. Next comes the saddle, and I cinched her down tight. And then I stepped on him and let it raises the blind. Get out of the way, boys, he's gonna unwind. He sure is a proud walker, he heaves a big sigh. He only lacks wings for to be on the fly. He turns his old belly right up to the sun. He sure is a sun-fishing son of a gun. He's about the worst bucker I've seen on the range. He'll turn on a nickel and give you some change. He hits on all fours and goes up on high. He leaves me a spinning way up in the sky. I turns over twice and I comes back to earth. I lies into cussing the day of his birth. I know there are ponies that I cannot ride. There's some of them left, they haven't all died. But I'll bet all my money the man ain't alive that can stay with old Strawberry when he makes his high dive. And to finish it all off, we got Joe Wesley.
The cow got in my way and I hit her over the head and broke my stick.
Hey, Papa Joe.
I'm gonna do something I ain't never done on Friday night. Many years ago, I was into storytelling pretty good, and College Park High School, College Park Elementary High School at Goshen, Mississippi, hired me to go down there one day out of the year and spend a day with the fourth graders. They had 3 fourth grade classes. And this was History Day. Our children don't learn history anymore. Archie Weiss was there. He was a frog man. He told them about his activities. There was the Indians from Philadelphia was there. They had the history of the Indians. The children learned real history from people who had been there. And I enjoyed that so much. And there's one story I told down there that something I want to run by you. The art of storytelling is being able to paint pictures with words and hang those pictures on the wall of your mind in a certain way to reach a desired ending. If you can't see what I'm telling, I'm not telling it right. So I will attempt to tell you, now, all of you, one thing I've never done here is tell a child story. I've got one of my children sitting over here, Olivia. She's from New Orleans. She's one of my little girls. When she comes up for adoption, I'm on top of the list. I get her. Right now she's hanging out with her grandpa. But now, the children's story that I tell will require you to respond. You'll have to answer the question. You'll know the answer because I'm going to tell you the answer before I ask the question. So it's very simple. Now, you know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Everybody know that story? Yeah. You know, his mama sent him to town with the cow to sell the cow and get some money, and he come back with a handful of beans. She got mad, threw them out the window. Next morning, I was at the vine. They went all the way to the sky. He climbed that vine, and the giant was up there. The giant chased him around. He had to dive for cover. Come out there, but he brought with him that hen that laid them golden eggs. Down that vine he come, that giant was after him, chopped it down, it fell down and killed that giant. And him and his mama didn't have to worry about money for a while. They had a hen that laid golden eggs. Hallelujah. Well, along came a man named Colonel Sanders. Uh-oh. He caught that chicken outside the safety area. And they didn't have no more hen that laid the golden eggs. Now Jack got to be a big old boy. He was grown up. His mama said, Jack, you big enough to get you a job now. You just a grown man. Now, I want you to get out, go down the road and find somebody you can work for and make some money. Yes, ma'am. One thing Jack did, when his mama told him something, he done it. I didn't care what it was. He did what his mama said. He went down there, went up to this farm, asked him for a job. Oh yeah, I need a good worker. He worked hard that way. That farmer said, Jack, you're one of the best workers I ever had. I'm gonna give you a big old silver dollar. Ooh, man, I got me a brand new silver dollar. He was going home and he'd flip that thing up there and it just sparkled. Man, ain't that pretty, silver dollar. I'm gonna see just how high I can flip this thing. And he throwed it as high as he could. There it was turning flips coming down and it fell in a briar patch. And he couldn't find it. He got home, his mom said, Jack, did you get you a job? Yes, ma'am, I got me a job down there with that farmer. He said I was a good worker. Well, did he pay you? Yes, ma'am, give me a silver dollar. Let me see your money. Mama, I lost it. You what? I was flipping it up in there, watching it shine. It fell in the briar patch, and I just couldn't find it. Jack, what am I going to do with you? Why didn't you just put it in your pocket? Put it in my pocket. I will remember, Mama, I'll put it in my pocket. That's what I'll do. Well, the next day, he worked real hard. At the end of the day, the farmer said, Jack, I know y'all ain't got no milk cow no more. I'm going to give you a gallon of milk. Now, he was walking home in that sunshine. He got to thinking, Mom, what did Mama tell him to do?
Put it in his pocket.
Do what?
Put it in his pocket.
I got to do what Mama told me. He took that milk and he started pouring it in his pocket. It run down his leg, filled up his shoe, and he walked in that door and his mama said, Jack, what is that all over your pants? Mama, that's milk. That farmer gave me a gallon of milk and I did just what you said. I put it in my pocket. Oh, Jack, my goodness, what am I going to do? Why didn't you put it on your head? Hold it on your head, Jack, and we'd have had some milk strength. Hold it on my head. Hold it on my head. Okay, Mama, I'm going to do what you told me. Next day after work, farmer said, Jack, I got something special for you to take home with you. I'm going to give you a pound of butter. Pound of butter? Ooh, that's good stuff. He was walking home, and what does Mama tell him to do?
Put it on his head.
Do what?
Put it on his head.
I got to do what Mama told me. He put it on his head. That sun was shining on it, and it came down. That stuff tastes good. He got home and walked in that door. His mama said, Jack, what is that on your head? Mama, that's butter. You know, that farmer gave me some butter and I done just what you said. You said put it on my head and that's what I did. I put it on my head. Jack, why didn't you take it down when you passed the creek? Just hold it in the water till it got good and cold. Hold it in the water till it gets good and cold. Okay, Mama, I got it. I'll do that. So that farmer, at the end of the working day, he said, Jack, your mama, I heard her talking at the grocery store and said, she got a lot of rats around there she needs to get rid of. I'm going to give you the rat catchingest cat that ever was right here. Okay. He was going down the road and he coming along. What did Mama tell him to do?
Put it in the
Come
creek
on
till it
now,
got
what?
good and cold.
Mama said to hold him in the water till he get good and cold. And that's what he done. He said that cat clawed him, but he stayed with him. He done what his mama said. He held that cat down there. That cat got good and cold. He got to the house and walked in the door. Jack, what have you got? Mama, this is the rat catchingest cat you ever saw. That farmer said so, Jack. That cat ain't gonna catch no more rats. Well, next day he went to work. Farmer said, well, we just about got it all done. But his mama told him, said, Jack, if you'd put that cat on your shoulder, we'd have a cat. Put him on my shoulder? Yes, ma'am, put it on your shoulder. All right, Mama, I'll do it. At the end of the day, farmer said, Jack, all the work's done, but I'm gonna give you something special. Now you can do a lot of work with this. There ain't no telling what. You'll have a good time with this. I'm gonna give you a donkey. A donkey, you can pull a wagon, you can haul firewood, you can drive that thing, you can ride in, you can do all kind of things with this donkey. Now he was headed to the house down that road and he got, what did his mama say?
Put it on your shoulder.
Come on now, help me out.
Put it on your shoulder.
Put him on your shoulder. Mama said that. I'm gonna do what my mama told me. He got down on his knees, crawled up under that donkey, stuck his head out through his front legs, and stood up. Ooh, man, that thing's heavy. His head was right over Jack's head. He was walking down that road. Now, on the way home up on the hill is the richest man in the country. Now, that man named Mr. Smithers. Now, he's got a daughter that has never been happy in her life. He said, anybody that can make my daughter happy, I'll give them half of everything I got. I'll give them anything they want if they can just make my daughter happy. He was sitting in the house reading the newspaper, and she was out on the porch swinging. And he heard something he ain't never heard before. He run out there, and that girl was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Honey, what in the world has made you so happy? And she pointed, and here comes Jack down that road with that donkey on his back. He run down there, he said, son, put that donkey down, come with me. No, my mama said, don't worry about what your mama said, come with me. Now the wind-up was he took Jack, put him on a brand new Harley motorcycle, red, bought his mama a convertible, built to my house. The wind-up was, it wasn't no long time after that, Jack married that rich girl. Now I got a question for you. Why did good things happen to Jack?
Always.
Because he always done what his mama told him to do. Thank you, ladies. I hope you get the message.
Well, that concludes our storytelling for tonight. And I thank you very much for coming out and listening to it. And again, we need more storytellers, and we need some more listeners too. So first Tuesday of every month, come on over, Methodist Fellowship Hall. And now it's time for the cross ties. Introduce the cross ties. They're going to give us some good music.
Wait a minute, no, we didn't promise that. No,
Be about 10 minutes.
we didn't promise good. Did you cash that check yet?
Invite them to come tomorrow morning. Invite them to come.
Oh, before I forget, tomorrow storytelling will be at the library. At the library, be from 8 till 12, or maybe after 12, 1, yeah. Till we run out of listeners. As long as we have listeners, we stay.